Hi, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Memorial Art Gallery's virtual lecture, Meet the Artist, the expanded cinema practice of Tara Merenda Nelson, in conjunction with Tara's exhibition, FourMats, which is now on view through August 8 at the gallery. My name is Almudena, and I am the Assistant Curator of Media Arts and MAG. I am connecting and I am presently on the ancestral home of the Seneca people, also known as the Grey Hill people and keepers of the Western Door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Today, Rochester has been and is home to many indigenous people. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, genocide, and migration that bring us together here today. I don't see this acknowledgement as closure, but as a move towards awareness and reflection, all of which are essential in beginning to establish healthy reciprocal relations. I want to start off by saying thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and a special thank you to Tara for being with us virtually. Tara Merenda Nelson is a filmmaker, curator, programmer, and lecturer working with film and digital media. Her films, videos, and installations have shown at the Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Flaherty NYC, Views of the Avant-Garde as part of the New York Film Festival, the Dallas Medianale, Video X Film Festival in Switzerland, Anthology Film Archives, Mono no Aware, the Warhol Museum, and many, many galleries and festivals throughout the US, Canada, and Europe. She is currently the curator of moving image collections and programmer of the VSW Salon series at the Visual Studies Workshop here in Rochester.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Almudena, and everyone at the MAG. I'm Tara Merenda Nelson, and I'm really happy and excited and grateful to be here with you tonight. Just so you know, I do have notes on pages, so I will do my best to be visually facing the screen present, but I am going to be looking down a little bit. But thank you all so much for coming tonight. I'm really honored and grateful to be here with you, and I'd like to especially send my thanks to the Memorial Art Gallery and the University of Rochester for presenting my work as part of the Media Arts program. And I would especially like to thank Almudena Escobar Lopez, the Assistant Curator of Media Arts at the MAG, for her steadfast support of my work and her keen curatorial guidance with this entire program. Wouldn't be happening without Almudena, that's definitely for sure. I would also like to thank the incredible staff at the MAG for all of their support, specifically Nino, Robert, Travis, Mike, Savannah, and Bryant. They have been amazing throughout the last 7 or 8 weeks, putting up with all these projectors in their gallery and lots of technical malfunctions, but it's been a really great opportunity to work with such a supportive staff. So I thank you all. It was a labor-intensive installation. I am going to share my screen now. Let's go to that. I appreciate your patience with any technical issues. Oops, sorry. Wrong button. Such as that one. Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about myself to begin with. I am an artist, an experimental filmmaker, working in 16 millimeter, Super 8, and video, and I also work in assemblage, sculpture, and media installation. I was first exposed to experimental film while living in Buffalo, New York. Shout out to Squeaky Wheel Media Arts Center there. And I became immersed in experimental film while living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the early 2000s, where I attended a monthly micro cinema screening series called Jefferson Presents. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term micro cinema, it's a term used for gatherings of small people in generally small locations, non-traditional cinema spaces, to watch non-traditional films. bookstores, basements, backyards, and that type of thing. And Jefferson Presents was very much part of that. I began making films in this community of multidisciplinary artists who attended micro cinema screenings and were, like me, inspired to create works in response to the radical avant garde films we were seeing on a monthly basis. Filmmakers such as my Lowder, Paul Sherritt, Peter Cherkassky, Stan Brakhage, Jonas Mekas, and so on. I came somewhat late to an art practice, making my first film at the age of 30 and getting my MFA in film video from the Massachusetts College of Art at age 34. I didn't go to any kind of Bachelor's of Arts degree program. I was in a completely different field up until my late 20s. Tonight, I'd like to focus on my expanded cinema practice and the development of the FourMats series, which is currently on display at the Memorial Art Gallery. So a little bit about what is expanded cinema. The term expanded cinema describes the integration of multiple forms of media to create non-traditional cinema environments. According to the Tate Museum, the expanded cinema is used to describe a film, a video, multimedia performance, or an immersive environment that pushes the boundaries of cinema and rejects traditional one-way relationship between audience and screen. This practice often includes performance, such as live sound, projection of multiple images and formats all at once, and interactive elements as well, inviting the audience to participate physically or sonically in the experience. Here we see in this image an expanded cinema performance that took place at Visual Studies Workshop in 2018, which included a rotating light sculpture called a dream machine, you see here, which I'll talk about in a moment. Projection of three 16 millimeter film loops. So these are different film loops created by myself and my collaborators, Mary Lewandowski and Nilson Carroll in the VWV. We have a film loop performance troupe. And also an improvisational sound performance by local band Pengo here in Rochester. What interests me about expanded cinema as a practice is the opportunity it provides to use something as simple as projected light to develop a deeper understanding into the human perceptual mechanism. So how do we turn light, how do we turn what we see into something that is meaningful? What biological systems are involved in that process? Traditional cinema tells stories, and that is a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong. But what happens when we take the stories away and just look into the light? When we see the light for what it is, where can that take us? Early on, I was interested in what I call screen splitting, so allowing more than one image to occupy the screen, giving the viewer the opportunity to actively engage their attention while navigating simultaneous temporalities. One of my earliest films here, 43rd Street Tree Lapse, was shot on 3 Super 8 projectors and shot and projected on 3 Super 8 projectors. It's a silent film. I'm going to play this while I talk a little bit. I'm just going to play a couple of minutes of it. This film, projected on 3 Super 8 projectors, addresses time as a subject in both form and content. In this silent Super 8 triptych projection, I documented the facade of each house on 43rd Street on 36 frames of film, which you see in the center screen, while the oldest tree on the street, which was also in my backyard, is shown in time lapse over the course of several days on left and right screens. I shot this film after buying my first house on 43rd Street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. These films and this projection performance really helped me to locate myself along a continuum of time and space, relieving an anxiety of ownership with a sense of belonging. As I continued my research, I am on, right? Yes, good. Can everyone hear me? Am I? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So,
Just keep an eye, and this is fine, but just keep an eye with the papers, because sometimes they touch the microphone. There you go. It's good. We could all hear you, but I just wanted to let you know so you don't. Yeah. Thank you.
okay, as I continued my research into film as a tool for understanding the human perceptual mechanism, I discovered other artists who had been working in the same questions as I had. In the early 1960s, artists Brian Geisen and Ian Somerville developed something called the Dream Machine, a simple kinetic sculpture made of a cylinder with shapes cut out that rotates on a turntable at 33 RPM. A light bulb is suspended in the center of the object, creating a flicker effect. And to view the piece, you must close your eyes and approach the light. What you see is unique to your own optical system, which receives pulses of light through the eyelids that are interpreted as different forms, images, and colors depending on the individual. I was inspired by the Dream Machine to create an interactive cinema sculpture that dissects the elements of the cinematic apparatus to directly engage with its essence, stroboscopic light. The title of this piece, Catharsis, I call it catharsis, and I'll actually start it while and talk a little bit more about it. It does have sound, but this is just a short documentation of Catharsis is a filmless film, I defined it, with no set duration, which can be viewed in those three layers while standing in front of the floating screen, while sitting behind the screen and facing it, or from a sitting position while facing the projectors with your eyes closed. This latter position allows the viewer the opportunity to experience a film made within their own mind, which only they can see. For me, catharsis was a dissection of the cinematic mechanism. Light projected through a shutter onto a form that creates a flickering image, while a shadow allowing a subjective internal image to form inside the mind of the viewer. The internal image is purely a response of the optical system to pulses of light. But by bringing attention to this response, the viewers begin to see themselves seeing. But what about color? My interest in light as a formal element of cinema brought me to my next expanded cinema piece, Measures. I had become interested in synesthesia, which is a perceptual phenomenon in which the senses effectively overlap. For example, some people can taste a shape, or hear a color, or associate certain numbers with physical proximities, like the number 7 is further away than the number 15, and that kind of thing. The range of synesthetic possibilities is actually really mind boggling. naturally to many, if not most, varying degrees. But what I was interested in was our ability to consciously cross these sensory pathways, basically to make ourselves synesthetic on purpose. In measures, I wanted to break down the elements of both music and light and ask the audience to participate in an interactive reordering of both. So for music, I chose four elements: melody, rhythm, tempo, and harmony. And for light, I chose blue, red, yellow, and green as the four elements, which, when combined in an additive color model, will create white. Each projection shows a colored figure in motion. Before the performance begins, I hand out four different instruments to four audience members. Something cheap and available, such as a harmonica, a shaker, flute, and a horn, whatever I can find at the dollar store. And I ask each of the participants to play a color. And they haven't seen the film before, so they're kind of, by volunteering, they're given this instrument, and I tell them, well, you play red and you play blue, and so forth. So everyone with the harmonica, for example, would follow the green figure, and everyone with a shaker would follow the blue figure, and so on. During the performance, I move the projectors, so you'll see them moving around, ultimately overlapping all the figures, which eliminates the color and creates white, because they should combine to create white light, and ultimately also silencing the noise or the music. Or at least that's the idea, but it never really works out that way. And that's another part of expanded cinema. You just let it happen. Here's a excerpt of measures. It's about, let's see, usually I think it is just a 2-minute excerpt from the 12-minute performance. After working with color and sound, I returned to black and white imagery to look more deeply at the idea of inversion, a concept which has many applications in sound as well as in image. Inverse playfully explores concepts of inversion in both light and sound. It is projected on two Super 18mm projector. What you'll see is a negative and a positive figure emerge side by side, contained within their respective frames. As the film progresses, the figures become aware of the frame around them and curiously investigate the wall that separates them from each other. The third image of a cat flickers in and out, watching their games. The score for Inverse is composed by artist Matt Wellens and consists of three different techniques for presenting audio inversion: musical inversion, spectral inversion, and amplitude inversion. The 16mm projection is done by my collaborator and husband, Gordon Nelson. We'll watch just a moment of this. So this brings me to my finally to FourMats and the background of the development of that piece, the current cinema sculpture, which is installed at the Memorial Art Gallery. I came up for this work around 2010, around the time Kodak had declared bankruptcy and the threat of losing film altogether was looming. I was in graduate school at the time, and my research into human perception led me to the Gestalt principles of organization, which involve observations about the ways in which we group various stimuli to arrive at perceptions of patterns and shape. Essentially, how we organize visual information to make meaningful shapes and make meaning out of what we see. I was particularly interested in articulating the differences in projection formats at that time. For example, 16mm runs at 24 frames per second, while Super 8 runs at 18 frames per second. A 35mm slide is a constant beam of light, no shudder or pulse, while video, also constant, uses scan lines in SD video or pixels in HD video to transmit the light of an image. I'll play a little excerpt explaining the series while I talk over it. This is a silent video, so FourMats consists of 4 media installations, each using 4 distinct projection formats to construct a single image. 16mm, Super 8, Slide HD video. When unified, the image created by each sculpture is projected on the gallery wall, and the unique visual qualities of each format become startlingly apparent. By juxtaposing the moving image formats with still images to compose a looping light painting, these works also confront the temporality of media-based works of art. So you see, obviously 35mm and video, again, are static images. Although as you just saw, the 35mm slide originally was meant to change every 5 seconds or something, but nonetheless, it's a static image juxtaposed with the moving image formats was sort of a really important aspect in terms of its ability to talk about time and time-based media and projection formats too. Each subject in this series was chosen for its iconic familiarity, as well as for this formal orientation. So I was interested in using classical perspectives of composition, Western composition. So the Kodak building that we see is a vertical composition. The banks of Lake Ontario we see frozen in winter is a horizontal composition. The surface of the moon, circular, and addresses sort of the idea of the golden spiral. And the vanishing point, which is one that we're not going to see, which is the fourth in the series, there's 4 total, is railroad tracks disappearing into the snow. So addressing the idea, a very important idea in Western painting, of the vanishing point. Each of these pieces, again, has its really own unique setup. They're, again, projected in 4 formats, as you can see at the mag. And part of the experience of the piece is to be in the space with the projectors and to experience their spatial relationship to the image itself. I want to talk a little bit about the first piece. I made which is called End of Empire. I made it in 2014 when I got to Rochester as a visual studies workshop resident. I had been working already in a series of sort of the idea of adding time to non-time based art forms. So I was shooting things like architecture and monuments. I was doing a whole monument series at the time. And I kind of combined my idea for the FourMats piece with the piece of the monument, but I didn't have one in my, I'd written a residency application to another place and didn't get in, and didn't have another monument in mind until I got to Rochester, and we went to High Falls and saw the Kodak building, and I said, oh, that's the monument. So I shot, we set it up, and we shot them all together. So these were same day. My husband and I, Gordon, shot them together. So 4 formats at once. And we weren't sure what was going to happen. We got the film back, and I was really excited to see if it was going to work. We projected the 16 and the Super 8, which are the top 2 images, on our apartment wall. And I was so excited that it actually worked, and then immediately saw, uh-oh, this film's been made. It's Empire. I hadn't seen that before I saw it on the wall. So I was a little disappointed, but then realized that's a wonderful opportunity. I think a lot of artists can relate to this, when your work talks back. So I was realizing that this, those of you who don't know Warhol's 1964 Empire, it's a especially in expanse, because it documents the Empire State Building in quote unquote real time. Shot at 24 frames per second and projected at 18 frames per second. The film itself lasts about 8 hours. And you're just seeing, time pass on the Empire State Building. So again, I shot this in 2014 with a different concept in mind, but also with this threat of Kodak taking film away, which actually it had. You see the film that we shot in this color was the last of Ektachrome 100D that we had, which was a color reversal stock, a color positive stock that Kodak discontinued a couple of years before. So we were holding on to this film, and the idea was that we were going to make loops out of it and just let them disintegrate, and that would be it, the end of this this film. But also considering Kodak as an empire itself that had, kind of colonized all of the world with its practice and didn't allow for any competitors. So when they did fold, there was no backup. No one was left to fill in the gaps and provide film. So thinking about it as an empire with it coming to an end, they did later recontinue the Ektachrome 100D, but at the time that was something that myself and other artists were quite disappointed in with Kodak. There's also a question of the time addressing in this too. Durational film like Warhol's seems endless, whereas my piece is loops, which are somewhat endless, and putting the idea of an end to these durational pieces was also sort of a pun, but we can talk more about that if that's it. Here I am capturing that Kodak Tower in 2014, and with all 4 formats plus one, with a digital camera set up there. I would like to especially thank at this point Gordon Nelson, my husband and collaborator, for his collaboration in all things, and especially with this piece. Without it, the format series would not be possible. I think we have time for questions, and I think that's all my slides, but I will stop share, and
let me see.
that was legible.
Yes.
You're here. Good.
I'm here. Hi. Hello. Yeah, we have a couple of questions from the audience, but I wanted to kick off first with one. So we will have I think we have time for at least 3 questions because we still have about 20 minutes. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was awesome to hear you talk about it more in depth. And yeah, and I'm just really looking forward to see the 4 of the formats, because I haven't seen it yet. So I want to see if it works, and I want to see it installed soon. So we'll do a test. Maybe that's next. So my first question is relating to, so apart from the exhibition and this lecture, we also have online a program that both Tara and I co-created. It is online for 2 days more, so you still have a couple of 48 hours to see it. It's not super long, so I encourage everybody to check it out. And it has a few films from Tara herself, and then it has films by Rose Lowder. It has films by Charlotte Robertson, and also Helga Fanderl. So it's a wonderful opportunity to see films that are not available widely. We actually scanned some of the prints on purpose for this. And Charlotte Robertson films are hard to come by these days, and Harvard Film Archives very kindly let us use one link to one of her films, Niagara Falls. So I will encourage everybody to check them out. So I wanted to kind of put in relationship both your more diaristic personal practice and this expanded cinema practice that you have been very well presenting, because they seem maybe formally non-related, but I think that thematically there is a common thread. You mentioned at the beginning of your talk this question of the sense of belonging, of situating yourself in time and space, when you were talking about Tree Labs, right, at 43th Street. So I'm really interested in thinking about this idea of expansion, right? The same as we call the program poetry of every day for a reason. It's this idea of using words in poetry with a freedom, right? To open up the possibilities of words. They don't just have one meaning, they have many meanings that can appeal to the senses, no? So I think that's something that happens also with cinema. And there is a couple of questions that will come later about formal questions, right? So it seems that you're expanding the possibilities of cinema, not only through expanded cinema, but also through the use of the camera towards yourself, as a way of, like, again, situating yourself where you are, as a woman, and in history, and there is a long tradition that relates to this. But I do think that even though it seems that they are not related, they are. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great juxtaposition, the online program, because the films that you see there of mine are very personal, diaristic, poetic, and the things I just presented are super formal, and playful too. But as an artist, and as I think this is common to many artists, um, having multiple modes and modalities to communicate through is technically and another aesthetically is very important. And it's actually kind of at the basis of the FourMats series. When when Kodak was going away and I was in it was a multidisciplinary program I was in graduate school, so not a lot of other filmmakers, more sculptors and painters, and people were saying, oh well, at least you have video's better anyway, which I was surprised to hear from artists. But to see the opportunity that different formats communicate different voices. You have it's a toolkit. It's a way for artists, and I don't call myself really a filmmaker that often, but just an artist that uses film. And this Super 8 is really my favorite, closest to my heart format for many reasons, but it's I have sort of a basis, a theory that because you get the least, it's on the smallest format, it's 8 millimeters wide, and it's projected the least number of pulses in a second. You only get 18. It's the darkest, you have to be the closest to it. You see the least amount of information. And what happens with your perceptual mechanism is you fill it in. Your brain does this. This is what dreams are made of, right? And so the Super 8, when you watch it, you actually, a lot of sort of feelings come up, right? So it really works well for certain types of films, diary films, travel logs, because it associates without you having to put it there, without you having to sort of grind in a metaphor. The format itself, the material itself, can bring about a subconscious perceptual actualization that you can work with, and you don't control it. It's there. It's like, so it behaves on its own, and it's a wonderful way to work, in my opinion. But I also have a series of videos, and they're almost all just gag. They're like one-liner humor, like, because each format for me allows me to communicate in a different voice.
And I will encourage everybody to just Google Tara's name and look at her Vimeo, because her video work is hilarious. It's really different from this. She's very polyphacetic. She's done a lot. But I will encourage everybody to check out Fruit Hospital. Just log in there. But yeah, I have more questions, but I'm gonna take one from the audience. This is from an anonymous attendee. It says, first there is a comment. It says, your work has taken me back to the origins of cinema in an unexpected and hard to describe way. And then the question says, can you comment on the barriers that conventional cinema and our comfort with it might need to overcome in order to appreciate the type of cinema you so wonderfully create? That's a hardcore question.
Whoa.
Thank you for the question.
I see where you're headed, though. Thank you for that question. It's you know again, I appreciate, you know, the traditional cinema, conventional cinema, I guess is what you're saying, is mimics theater. It's in there, you know, that's that it's kind of, and it limits itself in some ways. However, of course, has of cinema, which you now go in and go close, and you can play with duration and things that theater can't do. However, the relationship there is a little bit fixed in a wonderful way. I love theater and I love tradition. I love storytelling, but it isn't. You know, sometimes people try to add experimental techniques to traditional forms, and sometimes it looks cool, and sometimes it's just like, you know, lipstick on a pig. Is that a terrible thing? You know, it looks terrible, because it, again, I think you have to, I don't expect all artists to sort of have like perceptual inquiries like myself, but I do think that you know, just the idea that all film is what's in the spot, what's projected on the screen. It's what the picture is. It's not the picture. It's not just the picture. It's time. It's, you know, it's the experience of the space. I think we've all experienced the lack of being able to gather and sit together and watch films. And that changes your relationship to, because once you go back into the theater for the first time, you'll realize that your presence is your presence around people and presence with the projected image, the light itself. Because when it comes off of a screen, it's radiated light. When it's projected, it's reflected light. That's a different type of light. Okay, and your perceptual mechanism is aware of that. It means something. It makes a difference. So whether or not conventional cinema needs to address that in its storytelling, you know, who cares? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you know, it's an interesting question, and I think just to bring about an awareness is pretty close to all you need, in my opinion, for basic moviegoers.
Here, there's another question here that I think is a good follow-up from Catherine Dennison. Thank you for sending this question. It says, I've long been intrigued by the experiences of those with synesthesia. Did you begin your films with the intent to capture such perceptions, or as an interesting way to work with color, light, movement, sound?
Both, I think, because, you know, again, there's always, I have a million things floating around, but and when I'm working, and my research kind of took me into the, you know, what is perception, like, and then just go there, you know, boom boom boom, and do some reading and phenomenology and all kinds of things. And I'm not synesthetic myself at the same level of many people, but I definitely associate certain colors with certain objects, right? Or ideas or something, you know, it's to some degree. And I find that, to be honest, to answer this question most honestly, I think I was interested in finding a biological location of the imagination at that time. Okay, I thought that I was like, what if you could push a button or trigger the imagination to go off biologically? And that's what catharsis, that cinematic sculpture, was. I wanted to walk into a room, turn something on, and be like, give me some ideas. I think a lot of artists in grad school are doing this, but you know, that's what and I thought, well, actually, that's interesting. What is the biological location of the imagination? What is the connection between those two? And to me, that led me to synesthesia, as just sort of a field that of perceptual research, and then thinking about, okay, well, what can I cross in cinema in this way? With expanded cinema, I can cross sound and color. So I just sort of picked elements. You know, I could have, like, some people make like olfactory cinema where they'll fry something while a certain image plays, or, you know, there are other ways you could do it. But for me, this was a solution to that question for performance.
And this might seem non-related, but I think it is related. Just because you're talking about experience, you're talking about being together. One of the things I didn't mention at the beginning of the presentation, which I wanted to, is just in case someone missed this, is that all the films that Tara presented tonight are films that are intended to be performative. are, for all the reasons that she's been explaining, but just in case it's not clear, I wanted to remark that these are not a film. This is not a screen with the cat and the two people in inverse colors, in one screen. This is three projectors at the same time, simultaneously creating the image on screen. And that is super important, just in case that wasn't clear, which takes me to this question of creating a community through the experience of viewing cinema and how important it is. And also to talk about your other practice, because you are not only a filmmaker, you're also a teacher. You teach analog cinema to students at an MFA program in Brockport as part of the VSW Visual Studies Workshop program here in Rochester. You also are creating a space to view cinema in Rochester. You've been working on this for many years with your screening series, but also this community curator program that you have, where the archive from Visual Studies Workshop is used by public organizations here in Rochester and individuals to create a program and use it and use the archive. So there is this sense of constantly not only making an emphasis on the experience of cinema through your practice, but also for real, as this is, and this is an activist and a political radical act, I think, creating a space to view not just your work, but other people's work, and this idea of a student and teacher, right? That it happens between filmmakers, and this idea of the Jefferson Presents series that you talked about. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about all these facets, more facets from Tara that you have, and how that plays off in your thinking and your deep philosophy of cinema.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Elmo. I'm so happy that you know and mention all these things and know so many things about me. That's a great observation. Um, yeah, I think the word that I would say for me is always that my urge as an artist is a participatory urge. Fundamentally, I never, I always was a. This is why I didn't really study film as an undergraduate. I just hung out with artists a lot, and then I finally, when I found film, experimental film, I thought I want to I want to go there. I want to do that with those people. And ever since then, it became a participatory experience. And starting with the micro cinema that I went to, that micro cinema is in essence participatory. You're there with the projectors in the room, and the artist is usually there. It's very egalitarian. Everyone's kind of commenting out loud, and it kind of does away with these hierarchies. Which allows for more participation. So my work as an archivist, my work as a programmer, all of the work, my work working with artists here at our residency program is to how do we help each other in whatever direction we're trying to go, and what can I do to participate in that, and allowing for those experiences is very very important, and it's a micro cinema is a tradition that that is carried through by people who carry it with them. You know, it's a thankless job on many levels, but it's never ending. Like, it's a well of just never ending, gratitude and beauty for those of us for whom it's meaningful. We have to allow an open space for these kinds of participatory art acts, and include each other. But it isn't. I'm not saying it's ultimately include. Not everyone wants to watch Flickr films or listen to noise shows. Okay, and that's not what I'm saying. Like, it's not for everyone. It's for those of us who are artists who really, really need a place where we can gather and like do weird stuff, and look at these old films, and then also allow space for others in the community. I have this amazing opportunity as an archivist to bring people into an archive where they can do whatever they want. I don't want to tell them what to do. I'm just want to open the door, so that they can figure out what their participatory act with this media is. How do you want to use? How is this going to help your community, and how can our communities communicate around that? So it's a combination of nurturing a community and being in it through participatory act, and then kind of helping each other and helping other communities grow. And it's an ecosystem. We're in an ecosystem. The art world especially thinks it's just one form and one way. But for artists, that one way doesn't fit for a lot of artists. Would be there, or we don't want to. All we want to do is, hide in the shadows and watch Flickr films. But there's got to be a place to do that sometimes.
Yeah, and also ultimately, sometimes I think it's also a process, no? It takes effort. Sometimes you start showing these things and then it takes time. And at the end, this starts growing and growing, right? I agree with everything you say partially, but the only thing I will add is that I think it's for everyone. I just think it takes effort. I just think it's, it's challenging. It's going back to the first question from the audience, from this anonymous person who sent it. It is it challenges the way that we're used to watch cinema. So it takes a little bit of time and also to sit with the discomfort, and then it's rewarding. But it is a process, and I think we're getting there. We're getting there. Rochester has more and more cinema, not only both of the institutions where we work, but also there's many spaces at the moment, like the Little Theater, the Eastman Museum, at the Dryden Theater, where we have film all the time that we can see. We're very lucky. Then there's smaller galleries in Rochester, our pop-up shows, alternative spaces. So we're very, very lucky. It is available. So I will encourage everybody to check it out. Just plugging that in there. Well, we are running, I think.
Well, I'd like to add to that, Elmo.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Memorial Art Gallery is doing is tremendous, because you're opening space for media artists, and you're doing things like, oh, let's show 8 projectors at once, and that's not usual. So you're right. I have a lot of room to grow in the idea that that maybe it is for more people, and I didn't think anybody was gonna.
I know you're right. It's
not gonna work. Nobody wants to see that, but you really convinced me. And the Memorial Art Gallery, the media arts, is an amazing program, and I'm so glad that you're
Thank
doing
you. We try. Thank you. Well, it's 6:58. I just wanted to take this last 2 minutes, so we're done. But I wanted to take this 2 minutes just to encourage everybody who is in Rochester to please come by if you haven't checked out FourMats yet. It's up for 1 week more. So you have, today is Thursday, so you have Saturday this week, and you have Thursday and Saturday next week to see it. That will be the last chance, because it's again, the show, it is on all the time, but there is 2 days a week that is activated, and the projectors are all turned on so you can see it up and running. And then you have 48 hours to see the films from Poetry of the Everyday. I did share the link to the program here in the chat, but it's very easy to find. It's in the Memorial Art Gallery website. And also come to Rochester, check us out, check Visual Studies Workshop out, and don't be a stranger. Thank you so much, everybody who tuned in. Thank you, Tara. And I hope to see you all soon in the net or in person. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.